the post office scandal, the worst corporate injustice in history? Welcome to Mark and Pete. Here is a thought.
Dark cloud on the horizon. There's no accounting for good technology unless the software is badly coded. But when the vendor gives no apology, it's just debts that are downloaded.
Yes.
Well, it appears that hundreds of sub-postmaster workers that were wrongly convicted in the post office scandal could now have their convictions cleared. And that is an emergency measure that is being put through the UK Parliament at the moment. Now, what is interesting is that a very large compensation package, possibly reaching up to £1 billion, could actually go the way of some of these people. Now, what's interesting here is that there are more than 900 convictions that took place between 1999 to 2015, a staggering figure in itself. Now, they could all be overturned. Now, the post office prosecuted hundreds of sub-postmasters and mistresses over a faulty computer system called Horizon. And this was something that was put in and commissioned by Fujitsu. Now, the former sub-postmaster officer, who is called Alan Bates, is the person who has championed the cause for justice and has actually inspired the recent ITV drama Mr. Bates versus the Post Office. Well, he recently made a comment in the media by asking about the new law that could take place as a positive step forward. But what he did say, the devil is in the detail, and we've yet to see that. Clergyman Pete, I ask you, what should happen now with the compensation packages? And one thing that we will cover is what should happen to the post office going forward.
Well, the issue here is so I mean, it's almost unbelievably badly handled that it's difficult to comprehend. When things are so bad, it's difficult to quite take in how terrible that people have been treated. And so I think that any handling of it has to reflect that, just how bad it is. Yes, money should be paid back because these people who were accused of a crime they didn't commit, according to their contracts, were liable financially, weren't they, for money that went missing? So
absolutely,
they had money taken from them, and that needs to be returned. But it's not just that; it's far bigger than that. In fact, I could say there are actually two levels here. One is, yes, there should be a recompense, to show what has been done and the scale of it. There should also be a civil suit against the post office, because it's reputationally these people have been ruined. And so I could, if the court system was working well, you would have a huge amount of a large sum of money being paid over from the post office to these people, because they've just been, now, is it libeled or slandered? I guess it's both in this case, but certainly their reputation has been ruined. So that's why I say it needs to be very, very big, because this is just so bad and such a low blow. It can't stand. This must not happen again, and any sort of recompense must show that.
Yeah, well, there's something for our international viewers, for those people who are probably thinking, how could this possibly happen? It's almost like a bad crime story that's gone horribly wrong.
It is unbelievable.
It is actually real, folks. Now, what's worse is that those postmasters were actually contractually obliged to provide a shortfall. And unfortunately, what has already been proven now is that the Horizon system basically had glitches. There's a couple of other things as well. So effectively, when somebody was reckoning up their weekly takings, they would basically put in their details, and what would happen is it effectively miscalculated and doubled the shortfall. Unfortunately, through the incredulous contracts that they were asked to sign, the original postmaster officers had to pay the difference. Otherwise, they were liable. Now, of course, some of these glitches ran into not just a few pounds, but tens of thousands of pounds. And what was even more incredulous is that the post office knew there were errors with the Horizon system. There was also another rather sinister side, because at the time, the post office actually persecuted individuals stating that they were the only ones that they'd actually seen as cases, when in actual fact, as we now know, there are, and is still increasing, folks, hundreds, in nearly 1,000 people, and growing. But the point here is, not only were they asked to pay the money back, not only were they taken to court, some of them actually went to prison. Not only did that happen, they also lost their homes. So for those who are perhaps not familiar with Britain, but these would have been like shop outlets, and above, people would have actually lived in the, or above the actual post office. Now, the point here is it damaged people's lives. Here's the other sad and depressing side. Some people couldn't cope, and unfortunately, some of those people committed suicide. So what you have to say is that you'd think it would end there. No, folks, it doesn't. Because those leaders of the post office who knew about these issues were given a bonus. Yes, folks, were given a bonus on the persecutions and the prosecutions. So not only did they falsely take the money from the sub-postmasters as well, who were completely innocent because of a rogue, bogus software system, they continued to persecute these people and profited from it. Now, Clergyman Pete, I know that when you think of it from a moral perspective, take aside the legal side for just one moment, but from a moral side, this has to be some of the most evil acts that I've ever seen in corporate history.
Yes, the extent of it is difficult to comprehend. But true evil, I think, is this sort of indifference to the suffering of others, which has been shown by the post office in the way that it has handled this case. It's not that true evil is not necessarily the moustache twirling villain. In fact, it normally isn't that. The real evil is in this sort of unfeeling, uncaring bureaucracy, which has behaved in such a terrible manner, and has broken the Ten Commandments, let alone other laws. Do not bear false witness, I suppose, is the one that springs to mind.
Yep.
That's up there in the Ten Commandments. And also, though, they were stealing another Ten Commandments. They took the money from these post office workers because they were technically liable to pay it. And they were. This is the way it's unfolded. That seems incredible, isn't it, Mark? The people doing this appeared to be aware that there was a problem.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
Even as they were doing it. So,
well, there is
how you could do that? Totally unfeeling, totally uncaring, and breaking two of the Ten Commandments in the process.
I'm afraid it even goes. I know our international listeners are probably thinking this can't be possible. It goes even worse than that. Now you think surely it can't go any worse than that. Now the law, you'd think, would be robust enough to be able to protect these innocent people. But there's an irony here, because the lawyers of the post office actually were aware of the evidence but did not submit it in all of the cases, which meant that effectively what they'd done is they falsified a lot of their prosecutions. And that in itself has now raised the point about the lawyers, so the law itself, and particularly those who were advising the leaders of the post office, are now also under investigation. So for a number of our international listeners, there's a current inquiry that's going on now, really probing hard to those who were in power at the time. Now, there were not just one individual, there's a series of individuals. It also goes on beyond that, because I'd like to get to very quickly what I think should happen. But it also involves politicians. So there were people who were, for example, the post office minister at the time. And there were many other politicians who knew Ed Davey, who's given a knighthood, who's currently the head of the Liberal Democrats, he's under scrutiny because he was presiding over a period of time when he did know about some of these issues. Didn't go into the detail, folks, and yet he's standing as a politician for the next general election as a leader of a party. Might want to rethink that, Mr. Davey. But anyway, the point here is that the current Post Office Minister, Kevin Hollinrake, said something which really sort of prompted me to think this really explains what I think should happen. But what he said into the House of Commons recently was that the evidence that emerged from the ongoing public inquiry into the scandal suggested the Post Office acted with incompetence and malevolence. And so my opinion is it's such a rogue organization with a deep cultural misfit and injustice throughout the way that they operate. I think that now a couple of things need to happen. First of all, I think a compensation plan, and a sensible compensation plan. And there's no money on earth is ever going to take back or bring back those 25 years that those people lost, let alone the prison sentences and sadly the loss of face and the ignominy that they faced. But at least some form of sensible compensation could be put in place, meaning that they never have to work again. It could be in the millions, but that's really what we're looking at. The second thing then from that is to bring to justice those people who were culpable, both in the post office, both those lawyers who were advising the post office leaders, also those who were working for Fujitsu, because they knew as well. And here's the other thing, folks. I know that you wouldn't think this is possible. The British government continued, even though they knew that there's been evidence put together over the last 10 years that Fujitsu had a problem with the Horizon system. That system is still in place, but no, it goes even further than that, folks. They've been awarded further contracts elsewhere throughout government projects. You couldn't make it up. Now, I would say that what should happen is that the whole of the post office should be reorganized. It's not going to happen overnight because there's a few steps that need to take place. And let's be honest, the priority has to be those victims. But to me, I cannot see how that brand can continue, or particularly with the leadership or with the way that it's structured. I think it has to be restructured, rebuilt. It will take time. But if it isn't, then all it's doing is it's sending a signal, folks, that Britain is rogue. What say you, Clergyman Pete?
Yeah, I think that is it is something that needs to be sorted out from the ground up. It needs a wholesale restructuring. Yes, I think you can't let this sort of thing lie, and that we have here innocent people's lives ruined by a bureaucratic, not just incompetence, but malevolence.
Yep.
But let us know what you think, gentle listener, just by getting in touch with the show. Just go to markandpete.com. Make sure you subscribed, and you can make a comment on this and every episode. And of course, you could try sending us a letter through the post office, but we'll see if it gets to us. That's it for this week. Catch you next time.